Um, I hope you guys are well. Before I even go any further into this damn live feed, let me quickly say shout out to everybody who has been donating to me on Patreon. It is, guys, it's incredibly humbling insofar as this is it, right? I always talk about this. I always say that the podcasting and the radio and that's all about a quarter of what I usually do. The real work is on the ground. But before any of that, let me say hello, everybody. Is everything in scale? Is this, am I sideways? Let me just, I'm just going to log on to my channel here so I can actually see myself in real time as I do this, just to make sure that I'm not sideways again. You guys, technology. Oh, lovely. Okay. It looks very good. Okay. Splendid, 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 splendid. Shout out to everybody and welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Remember, this is the show that happens every Wednesday night with moi, your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty. How you guys doing? Needless to say, I've missed you guys immensely, especially as we experience the clown world that is South Africa in lockdownistan, day 55 now, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's day 55 of this lockdownistan situation, where remember, you now live in a country where drinking and smoking is not allowed. Lockdownistan, that's right, lockdownistan. Guys, welcome to it, as I always say. Shout out to you, Sean Kemsley. Hi, homie, I see you. And I see all the regulars too. Guys, welcome to the show. I'm going to give it like a minute or so just to give guys a chance to join us. But it's going to be a jam-packed show. Oh my goodness. Lots to talk about. Lots to chew the fat, excuse the pun, on. And by the way, to the guys who've been giving me feedback on social media, Facebook, and they're like, guys, I do listen. And thank you very much. I will try my level best, no matter how angry I get, to tone down the swearing. I'm actually not. It's somewhat uncharacteristic of me, but I think I've been led into a very dark place by what's been happening in the country. A dark place where, the real, almost guttural anger comes out, and you feel yourself becoming someone who you ordinarily aren't, but are happy to become if it means that that's the energy, that's the gees that you're going to use to fight back and to push back against those who are screwing with South African families. Because I don't think you guys understand, and maybe you think it's just rhetoric when I say it, but if you mess with South African families, you literally will invoke the anger, the furious anger of Big Daddy Liberty. That is one thing, that is one line that I have drawn in the sand, and I've said here and no further. So I hope you understand where it comes from. But yeah, you're right. I am going to tone it down. Shout out to everybody joining the show, man. I see you guys. Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As I give it just 20 more seconds for people to join us, and I fix all my notes here. Guys, okay, I'm going to get into that just now. Oh my goodness. Man, I have some juicy information for y'all. All right. Let me just get my ducks in a row. That looks about right. And a 1 and a 2 and there we go. If you're wondering what I'm looking at, it's my computer screen, just to my right, your left. All right. Just 10 more seconds, guys, just to get people coming through. Jason Getz, hello, Achi. I see you, homie. Good to meet you. Vutsarko. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce that quickly enough before it disappeared on the screen. Rohan De Beer, shout out, homie. I see you, dog, from Benoni. Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show, homie. And as I just quickly open up this last page over here, shout out to you, Mr. Langa from Toti. Wow, man, Toti, you're very close to where I'm from. I'm from Mlazi. So Toti is literally a hop and a skip, homie, a hop and a skip. Kim Lee, I had a good day, Baronki, for the vraag. All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Twaki, I see your question, dog. I had to chip in. You always talk about my gun. What do I carry? I'll tell you what. Let me do an episode later on that. And if you want to see some of the goodies that I've fired off, make sure you go to the Big Daddy Liberty channel on YouTube. That's youtube.com/Big Daddy Liberty. Check it out, guys. Subscribe. Check the content that I have on here. I think I have over 130 videos now, 120 videos, and quite a few of them are my gun toting episodes. Lots of interesting stuff there. And shout out to you, Paratus, Gideon Yober, a good homie of mine from Cape Town, big gun nut, but also very knowledgeable on all things gun related. Make sure you follow his page too, Paratus, on Facebook, and I think on YouTube, but I'm not 100%. And of course, shout out to Gun Owners South Africa, the organization, Tim Flack and guys. Shout out to your good friends of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Okay, guys, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. If you've joined us, all 155 of you, blessings to you guys. I hope you guys had a fantastic day in the week. So far, it's been a good one. The cold weather's coming in. Hey man, whether you're a Siberian husky or a island tropical type guy, this weather, hey, chills right to the bone. Quentin Nagal, shout out to you, homie. How do you support me? Guys, it's quite simple. Maybe let me talk about that briefly before we get into the week that was and some of the big news items. Ere Shalom, how are you doing? What does Big Daddy Liberty do? Let's begin there. Just let me spend 3 minutes or so on this quick topic, because a lot of people think it's just, he's just another random black guy shouting into a screen. That's, I suppose at its most naked level, that is a description of what I do. But the reality is I have given up, and I had given up what I did before. A promising, if I can call it, political operator type career, guys in the background basically, in order to basically do this. And it happened because I recognized that formal party politics in South Africa is trash. And as I always say on social media, #politicians are trash. Because I quickly realized that no one wants to have that honest conversation. No one wants to look a South African in the eye and say, I get you. I get what's happening. I get the pain that you're being subjected to. And not only do I get it, I want to do something about it. I found that very few people are doing that or wanting to do that. Most people are self-interested, and that's fine. We're all different. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses and desires. But I felt as though there was a gap in that ground war, as I like to call it. There's two things that Big Daddy Liberty does. I have an air war, much like the army has an air force, and I have a ground war. And those two components to the Big Daddy Liberty brand are super important. The air war is exactly what I'm doing now. Shouting out, talking to you guys, fantastic conversations on not only the podcast, but also here on YouTube and Facebook, social media, Twitter, you name it. That's the air war. Right? I saw that question, Gordon. When's the Navy coming? And I can actually swim really well, thank you very much. So who knows? I might have a few of my own subs peeking out as they did in, was it Mossel Bay recently? Anyway, I digress. The air war involves, and both, by the way, the ground war and the air war are both rooted in the battle of ideas theory. Remember I explained to you that the battle of ideas is the idea that as any society, to change any society that is going through turmoil, that is facing mass upheaval, to change that society, it is he who injects the greatest volume of ideas into that society at the point of crisis who will change that society. I'm going to repeat that because I'm sure some of you are joining and you're wondering, what is he talking about? It is he who who injects the greatest volume of ideas into a society at the point of crisis who will change that society. That is the ethos, if you will, the battle of ideas theory that I work under. Thus, when I do stuff like this, it isn't just to be, a nice way to unleash my anger and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm waging the battle of ideas. I'm speaking to people about ideas that, firstly, they don't hear them in the mainstream media. They don't hear them in the mainstream media. The things that you'll hear on this show with your favorite fat boy, you will never hear in mainstream media. And why? Because the mainstream media in this country has fully immersed itself in the toxic leftist identity and race politics, which our politicians literally push out as their modus operandi. On mainstream media, you'll hear the conversation such as, whites are racist, and blacks are victims, and any other racial trope that sort of pervades in the academic circles, you'll hear being expressed in mainstream media. And I was sick of that. Because in reality, ordinary South Africans don't talk like how our media do. Ordinary South Africans on a day-to-day basis don't talk like our politicians do. Have you ever taken a moment to take a step back and actually think, hang on, when last have I ever heard an ordinary person on the street say to me, maybe as I greet them, or if they are a rondloper, what's a rondloper in Engels? A bergie? Sorry, I really can't, a vagrant. If you give a vagrant 5, maybe 2 rand, 10 rand on the street, he doesn't then go into a full academic thesis around, why the settler colonial white individuals, blah, blah. Like, who talks like that? So ordinary South Africans do not talk like that. So that when I really thought about what I'm doing and what I want to do, it was to bring out that South Africa, the real South Africa that actually is deeply thoughtful, is rather moderate and conservative to a large extent, and actually quite reasonable and quite sensible. If you want to really talk about the nature of South Africans, it's that. And then you look at the character of South Africans, and I've had this conversation before on the show, where I said to you, South Africans there's 3 major characteristics to them that the media doesn't reflect and government, our politicians don't reflect. Number 1, South Africans are a God-fearing nation, 97% Christian nation, 97% Christian, large Muslim population and a small Jewish pocket in this country. But all of those various religions, Hindus also, all of those religions, it's not it's not the religion necessarily that divides us, because there is no division. It's the values that unite us in those religions. It's the values. Think about it for a moment. You can literally have neighborhoods, whole neighborhoods in this country, where Muslims, Christians, Hindus live in one neighborhood, not a single problem. Other parts of the world look at that and they go, wow, look at what's happening in India right now, for instance. Albeit, again, pushed by their politicians, Modi in this case. So that I recognize the privilege of being a South African, where South Africans are a deeply spiritual and religious nation. However, it's the values we draw from that, which are what I want to focus on, because it's those values, I argue, that actually bind us together, whether you're a Christian or Muslim or Jew or whatever. Number 1, God-fearing nation. Number 2, we're by and large a law-abiding society. Yes, and whenever I say this, I see a lot of people's eyebrows go up. Law-abiding? Have you seen our crime rate? Yes, I've seen our crime rate. But really, in real terms, the vast majority of South Africans are not criminals. They're not. We're victims of the crime, yes, but we're definitely not the criminals. Problem is, we tend to forget this because we sort of isolate ourselves, we put the blinkers on, and we live our truth, right? And we don't take a moment to actually remove ourselves and go, but is the next guy not suffering from the sort of crime that I am? When a worker who works, let's say, a night shifty type job, or a job where he leaves the workplace, very late, and has to now take a bus or a taxi home, and maybe they live in an informal settlement and they have to weave through that poorly lit informal settlement. Do you think he's not worried about the crime? Do you think he's not worried about the crime? as would an individual in the middle class, for example, in your Mercedes-Benz, rolling up to your gate and wondering if there's going to be hijackers there? Are those two people, different as they are in their economic echelons, are they not worried about the crime? Each of them? Even though they're different economically? Guys, we must begin to view each other as South Africans who are going through common issues. Period. Fact. So that you then understand when I describe South Africans as being God-fearing, law-abiding, by and large, and the last one, of course, being family-orientated. Those are the three things that define South Africans. We are God-fearing, law-abiding, by and large, unless, of course, the traffic light is turning orange and you want to beat that. And, of course, the last one, we're family-orientated. Because I can tell you now, and I've made this example before, but let me revisit it because I can see more people have joined us. Shout out to you guys for joining me. Welcome to the Big Daddy Liberty Show. I'm talking about South Africans. Who are we really? Are we what the media describe us to be? Which is we hate each other on race. There's a race war coming. Screw them. They're white supremacy, blah, blah, blah. Those blacks untrustworthy, blah, blah, blah. Are we really that society, or are we what I'm describing now, which is God-fearing, law-abiding, family-orientated? Whether you're black, you're white, whether you're rich or you're poor. Those three things, common thread that literally binds and threads South Africans together. So it's those characteristics that I have in mind when I think about what I've begun to do in my own life and what I'm willing to sacrifice for the love of country, and how I can be the great person that I think I want to be and I think I can be, again, for the love of country, for the love of countrymen. What is my contribution before I die? What's my contribution to this country? What's my contribution to you? What's my contribution to you, Mary Ann, to you, Gavin, and the millions of other South Africans who aren't on this platform either? And I'll get to that because that's the second element of what I do. Because remember, I'm describing the two things that I do primarily, just to give you a context of what Big Daddy does. It's the air war. So you finding me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, broadcasting ideas, pushing stuff out, occasionally debating people, but I've learned not to do that. Because some people just come with asinine stuff, like a rabbit hole logic, where the moment you go in there, you are not coming out. Alice, you need to click your fucking heels 3 times. Wait, that's Dorothy, sorry. Mixing up my folk tales up in here. But I've learned not to do that anymore. Instead, push the ideas out. Have people chew on those ideas, and don't, as I said, fall into the rabbit hole of, oh yeah, but what about this? And what about that? The what about you? I'm done with that. I'm here to push these ideas out. So that's the air wall. That's what I do here. And shout out to every single one of you who tune in and watch and support me. I really, really appreciate that. And I am about to get to that because my Patreon's been blowing up quite nicely. And really, I don't think you guys understand how appreciative I am of that. And I'll explain why just now. Then the other element of it, of course, is the ground war. This is the important... I could literally forego this to do just the ground war, because the ground war is where the fight really is being waged. What do you mean about ground war, Big Daddy? What do you mean by that? Well, let me get into it. The ground war is essentially as it describes. I have support from an organization called the Institute of Race Relations, very generous in being able to say, Big Daddy, we see your vision, we see what you're doing. And guys like Franz Crenier, the CEO of the IRR, literally said, Big Daddy, homie, we've got you. Just literally go out there and push the message of classical liberalism into communities. Because when I first met Franz Crenier, and I'll have him on the show, from the Institute of Race Relations, the conversation I had was, Doug, I'm sick of politics, because I used to work in government, in the Western Cape government under Helen Zille. And I said, I'm sick of politics, formal party politics, because we're not talking to people about these ideas. We're just sort of like keeping them in this weird little bubble, and it's patronizing and it's insulting. And all of the parties do it. It isn't just the ANC, the DA also do it. The DA also do it. And I said, I'm sick of that. We're treating grown adults like children, and we're suggesting to them that government should control more and more elements and aspects of their lives. That's not how you talk to. That's not how you talk to adults. That's not how you talk to adults. You will never. Oh, you see, now I'm getting worked up. In South Africa, we have had 26 years of a conversation about rights and what I am due and what I am entitled to, and very little in the way of a conversation around responsibilities. What do you do for yourself, the individual? What do you do for your family? What do you do for country? We have not had that conversation at the level, the requisite level that I argue defines a free, prosperous, and property-earning society. And then we wonder why there's so many problems in our country where people don't want to take responsibility, people don't want to take accountability, all the way from your politicians at the very top, all the way down to the individual in whatever social, breakdown you want to go into about how individuals act in this country. And then we really are surprised. And the politicians play into this, man. The whole political rhetoric is just grounded in the idea of how can I, when I get into the government, promise as much as I can to people as though they're children, and that they shouldn't do anything. I will provide as daddy government or mommy government. Hey man, screw that. Screw that. I'm a human being. I'm an individual. Treat me as such. Treat me as such. And I'm telling you now, when I travel across the country, speaking to people, especially people who have families in particular, the mom, the dad, you hear that. You hear them say, you know what, I just wish I could be empowered to act and make decisions for myself, but I can't. Because I live in a society where I'm obligated to a large extent, or at the very least pressured to sort of bend the knee and deferentially say, oh, dear politician, what will you provide for me today? And it's sickening. If you are a freedom lover like me, if you're a lover of the individual in a society, if you have a deep passion for families, then it's sickening. It's sickening. Hang on, I think I may have done something here. I don't know if you could hear that. Sorry, I know that doesn't make sense, but I've got a little sound mixer here that has sound bites on it. So I don't know if a sound bite went through. Anyway, but let me not lose my train of thought, because I really want to explain why the ground war then becomes very important, and why the ground war is, I can almost forego this kind of stuff, the YouTube and the Facebook, just to focus on the ground war. And what is the ground war? Guys, I said this before, and I'll reiterate it here and now. I am about to sacrifice, if I can call it that, but I see it more as a duty than a sacrifice. Hello, Bonke. Shout out to you. I can see you, girl. Welcome. I am about to sacrifice the next 6 months of my life to literally everything you see behind me. I am going to sell as much of my stuff as I can. I'm going to end my lease here, and I'm literally going to live on the road for the next 6 months. And in those 6 months, my mission is absolutely crystal clear. I want to talk to as many South Africans as I possibly can. And the mission is to share my values and to share my ideas. What are the values, Big Daddy? Well, let me be precise and specific. Number one, as I said, it's faith, flag, and family. Those are the three things that I care more about in preserving as values of BDL and sharing those with fellow South Africans than anything else. The idea that those three things tie us together. No matter what the politicians say, no matter what the media say, no matter what the blabbity blacks say, no matter what the social justice whites say, those three things tie us together as South Africans: faith, flag, and family. And I get emotional even thinking about it. I get emotional even thinking about it, because it's those three It's those three values which are under assault in this country. And they're under assault by a gaggle of commies, socialists, and race merchants who really are invested in seeing this country falling apart for their own ends, each to their own ends, but essentially that's their common goal. That is their common goal, is to see white people be cast as oppressors and land thieves and all these things that you hear that are designed to divide us. To see black South Africans, and I hate the racial categories, but I'm just using them for the purpose of being understood. To see white South Africans, as I said, be cast off as invaders, as if they don't have a place in this country. To talk about Indian South Africans as somehow being shifty and inherently hateful or racist. I mean, you've heard how, for example, Malema talks about Indian South Africans. People I grew up with in particular. I'm from Durban. To hear how they talk and malign and insult colored South Africans, people with a deep history in this country. I mean, they talk about them as if they're cattle. Y'all heard Jenny Mania, if you remember back a few years, saying, oh, you know, these people are over-concentrated in the Western Cape. The fuck is that supposed to mean? Who talks like that? Who talks like that? I mean, that's the sort of language I could have taken from Jimmy Mine, who was then in the ANC. He's now formed his own little shitty party, and literally put him with the Nazis, and he'd be firmly in the right place. I mean, look at how they talk about black South Africans, as if we're victims, as if we're perpetual victims, helpless, useless things that need them in order for us to self-actualize, in order for us to have a voice, that we need them. That's the argument that they make about us. That's the condescending tone they take about black South Africans. I can't even take pride in my culture, my language, my history, because there is a demand for me to see myself as a black person, or blackness, as they like to talk about it, these social justice warriors. And blackness, of course, comes with this notion of eternal victimhood. No, you're black, you can't be all that you can be. No, you must be a victim. The fudge does that supposed to mean? I can't acknowledge the fact that I come from a warrior stock, a nation, a conquering nation of peoples. I'm going to shut that down. I'm going to shut down the fact that I come from a proud clan of the Ngobeses, people who are known as cattle rustlers, who are renowned for their mercenary skills back in those days. If you were from a tribe that lost cattle, and you needed them to be reclaimed back, your private property to be reclaimed, the tribes knew back then you could go to Ntabantu Zuma, find the Ngobeses, they'll hook you up. They'll fight that battle. Warriors. I can't claim that now because you want me to claim this nonsense, this bullshit called blackness or being black. Is that what we're doing now? Guys, this is a free man talking to you. Legit. Free man talking. We need to be able to claim the values that bind us. We need to be able to say, you know what? I am more than just this little, man. Nah, y'all ain't ready for this. Y'all ain't ready for this. I'm going to do this one in another episode. Y'all are not ready for this. Y'all are sure as hell not ready for this. Anyway, man. So yeah, guys, that's the ground war that I'm fighting, where I take to communities, I share my values with them, faith, flag, and family, and say, if you believe in those three things, then back me, be with me. Who is with me on this one? Let's lead the charge. And this isn't the charge of the Light Brigade, homie. We're going to win this one. Because not only do I then walk you, or put the armor, if you will, of these values that I think are shared amongst us, the ideas are the weapons that we then have. The ideas, the liberty-leaning ideas, the classical liberal, libertarian, conservative, no matter how you view them, but essentially the ideas are the weapons that we have at our disposal. The idea of a free society where you limit the role of the state and you raise the importance of the individual. You raise the importance of the South African family. That's where power should reside. The individual and families, not government, not politicians. And this, of course, has practical policy intervention that I talk to people about. That I actually talk to people about. It's not like I'm just sort of, waffling away in communities. No, I talk to people about real issues. What does it mean to live in a liberty-orientated society for education, especially for a poor person? What does it mean for healthcare? What does it mean for safety and security? Actual policy interventions that people can get behind. I arm them with the ideas and I expect them to push back against politicians. That's the ground war. Those values and those ideas. If you can empower the Gewone Burger, ilungu lomphakathi, the South African, the ordinary citizen, with those ideas, then you can expect a groundswell of people who begin to push back against politicians, regardless of the race, regardless of their class. They literally push back and say, these are the ideas I want. But someone has to do the groundwork. It will not miraculously happen. Someone has to do the groundwork. And that's what I'm saying. So used to arguing. That's what I'm saying. I'm devoting the next 6 months of my life. Based on your support, I won't lie, based on your support, but that's what I'm devoting the next 6 months of my life to do. Hitting the streets of this country, speaking to people, no matter how small the organization that asked me out, or even if it's a family that says, look, I'm just a household, I can bring some friends together, I want them to hear these ideas, I will come out and I'll speak. Because it means so much more to me. I recognize that if you're going to fight for this country, if you're going to do something meaningful, to actually push back against the tyranny, basically, of evil men in government, if you're going to push back against them meaningfully, then you've got to rally South Africans behind the values and the ideas that you stand by. That's the battle of ideas. That's what Big Daddy Liberty does. The air war and the ground war. So I hope you guys understand a snippet of it. I'll probably talk about this in greater detail once I've formulated my plan. As I said, the next 6 months, I'm working on it as we speak. Like where I'm going to be, why I'm going to be there, what groupings I'm going to have rally around me, etc., etc. Sorry, guys. Very thirsty. So that's what I'll be doing. Wow, I took a moment to digress on this one. Anyway, welcome to it, guys. If you just joined us on the Big Daddy Liberty Show, you just missed me go on a little, well, it wasn't a rant. I don't think it was a rant, but more of a reveal of who it is that you're listening to, who it is that you are, talking to, and not only who I am, but what my plan is, or what my intention is rather, because the plan I'm still working on, the plan. But definitely what my intentions are, so that you understand who it is when you do donate to me. And I remember, I always say this, guys, like I understand we're not a rich people, especially right now, but $1 a month is all it takes. And this is what I wanted to circle back to. The people who have just come out on Patreon and showed me immense amounts of love, man, to say, look, BDL, here's $1, homie. Push for that individual freedom. You've got your back, dog. I really appreciate y'all. All 27 patrons on here. Guys, I appreciate you all. I often try to send each of you an individual message when I see you donate. And if I don't, I'm really sorry. Please don't take it personally. I'm just struggling now to keep up with all the inboxes on the various platforms. But I really appreciate it, because these are the funds that get me onto the Liberty bus, so to speak, that get me out into communities, the rural areas of this country, the informal settlements, townships. These are the funds that will pour the diesel in the bucky, that will, help me get some accommodation wherever I may be in order to reach ordinary South Africans. This is not pop and flace money, low. Excuse the pun, because I obviously do buy dinner and lunch and whatever from this. But what I meant by that is, it's not pop and flace insofar as you're parting with hard-earned money to support me, and I'm deeply appreciative of that. I'm deeply cognizant of that. And so that all 27 of you, I literally I don't think you guys understand how much I respect every single one of you for joining the Liberty Bus. And I do see the comments. I know some people saying they can't support me on Patreon. It's very difficult. And then if you can't do Patreon, then support me through the IRR, the Institute of Race Relations. They have a crowdfunding campaign. And all you do is you just SMS your name to 32823. That SMS will cost you R1. Terms and conditions to apply. And an agent gives you a call and signs you up for a monthly debit. And you can say, look, I'm doing this to support Big Daddy Liberty, and they'll sign you up for a monthly debit. And it's these funds that get me into the fight. It's these funds that get me into the fight. For the international audience, I'll probably find some other ways in which you can support. But guys, this is not what I want to talk about. I do want to get into the meat and potatoes of the show, because I've got some interesting stuff here that I want us to talk about. And if you're joining us, guys, shout out to you. I do see the comments. Let me actually open them here so they're easier to read, because these fly by real quick. Shout out to you, Stockholm student or stud, lol, sorry for assuming you're a student. Shout out homie to you in Potchefstroom, I see you, dog. Paula Kernan, I see you, sister. You definitely have a seat on that Liberty Bus, girl. Support your favorite fat boy and we can make this happen. Guys, let me get into the show. So it's been an interesting week. It's been an interesting week since the last time we spoke on the BDL show last week, Wednesday. And there's been some interesting stuff happen. Let me just go back to my notes here. I think the funniest thing I enjoyed this week, the funniest thing I enjoyed is the article that came up, I think, in the Citizen newspaper, where Bheki Cele, the Minister of Police in this country, the hat-wearing 1920s gangster-looking General Bheki Cele, was busted himself for breaking his own damn restrictive lockdown rules by going to visit the house of Minister Bladen Zimande in Pietermaritzburg. I mean, it's asinine stuff like that. And then they wonder why South Africans are just not taking this lockdown seriously anymore. It's because they themselves, the politicians, are the biggest damn hypocrites in this entire thing. From that first minister, who was then forced to apologize, begrudgingly on air. That was Kakwani, Stella Ndabeni, I think. No, what's Stella? I'll find it just now. And now Bheki Cele. Again, these guys, they make these rules, they talk tough, and they sick their police officers on us. They sick their brown shirt army soldiers on us. But for them, no. For them, what is that expression from George Orwell? We're all equal, but some are more equal than others. Well, clearly he proved that. Because do you think there'll be repercussions for Bheki Cele, for him for breaking, thanks Romstone, Stella Ndabeni Abraham, thanks him. Do you think there'll be repercussions for Bheki Cele for allegedly breaking the lockdown rules? No, of course not. Do you think he'll be beaten up by soldiers? Do you think he'll be beaten to death like Mr. Khoza was for breaking, or not that Mr. Khoza broke the rules, but in this instance, do you think soldiers will be beating up Bheki Cele? Do you think they'll be making him do frog jumps and rolling around in the dirt or ripping apart his grocery bag and watching everything spill on the floor? Do you think any of that shit will happen to him? No. Why? Because some people are I'm laughing at your comment. I am all music. Some people are more equal than others. Politicians in this country are definitely more equal than us as ordinary families. Bheki Cele, I was trying to think of the nickname I gave him. Dick Tracy, that's right. Do me a favor, just Google search Dick Tracy to understand why I call that douchebag of Bheki Cele Dick Tracy. Who Bheki Dick Tracy with the hat? Cele. Do you think he'll be punished? Do you think the president, the one who you so celebrate and venerate, Cyril Ramaphosa, Yusufani Blaman, do you think that douchebag is going to punish Bheki Cele? What do you think he respects about Bheki Cele? The fact that the man is competent, in inverted commas? He's not competent, by the way. But do you think that he respects the fact that he's competent, or the fact that Bheki Cele has more political clout? Think about that. Why is it that he was able to reprimand Stella Ndabeni Abrahams, essentially a political nobody in the ANC, but he won't be able to reprimand Bheki Cele, because Cele actually has a constituency in that party, and he can tell the president to F off. Which circles back then to whether the reprimand that minister, the other one, Stella Ndabeni, received, was it really authentic, or was she just a low-hanging fruit, an easy target for PR purposes? I'll leave that with you to think about. That made me laugh this week. The sheer double standards. And they're sheer because they're murderous. People have died in this country. People have wounds that they're tending to from having been beaten up by these very same politicians who said to us, no, you must stay in the house, you must have a curfew, you must bend the knee if you see my thugs of police and soldiers on the street. You must accept our police officers grabbing and snatching your children away from you, as was the case in Palito. And that we will then declare, even though the evidence is patently there to see, we will declare, as the KwaDukuza municipality did, that no. Even though you saw our cops grab and manhandle your child, they didn't grab and manhandle your child. That's the sort of clown world we live in. And then there are people who literally clap for this. And it's been interesting to note, and I think I've made this point before, it's been interesting to note that the very same people who clap for this thing, it's mostly your elites and the middle class types who support this kind of trash. Why? Because they know they're safely ensconced behind all of that show of force from the state. They're safely ensconced. All of that show of force is aimed at those people, as you often hear, they refer to poor people and township residents as those people. They're the ones who face the brunt of the violence of the state. Hey, okay. Do you see why I get angry? Not that it sounded weird. I heard that the moment I said it. Let me rephrase that. But do you see why that infuriates, and it should infuriate? Is that we've become a society that accepts that violence from the state is justified or even fine, it's okay, as long as it's being meted out to those people and not us. Guys, that can't be right. That can't be right. You can't sit here and say, yeah, Big Daddy, we support you on the whole faith flag family thing, and be the sort of person that then is okay with poor people being treated like that. And I spent a whole episode last week talking about the case of Mr. Collins Khosa, who brutally beaten to death in front of people that loved him. Soldiers mobbed him, allegedly. JMPD, Johannesburg Metropolitan Police, mobbed him, beat him to death. You can't live with evil people like that, man. You've got to fight them. You've got to fight evil like that. You can't sit back and just be like, no, someone else, will answer this prayer for us. No, guys, God gives us the agency to fight this sort of evil. And that's what I intend to do. Hey, I'm not going to go into this one because I did prosecute it in full detail last week. What else? What else was in the news cycle? I think these are the major issues, and you could see it in the thumbnail. I really wanted to get to these top 3 issues, really. Not that there aren't others. I mean, there are other issues, guys. But the Minister of Education, Angie Motshekga, made an announcement. Was it yesterday or the day before? Basically saying, hey, guys, what's up? It's me, Angie, your homegirl. I know you haven't heard from me in a while. Is the turn she kind of took with us. But schools are going to reopen on the 1st of June. Schools are reopening on the 1st of June. And according to her, I'm sorry, I did have sound bites that I wanted to play, but for whatever reason, the tech is not cooperating. I had sound bites of her actually, and I'd broken it up quite nicely, but it's not playing. But essentially her words were, look, we're reopening schools on the 1st of June. And the first sort of tranche of students who will be returning are the grade 7 and 12s. They're going to be returning to school as of the 1st of June. I think they're going to phase everybody else in. And people lost their minds when she said this. Look, to be brutally honest, and I don't know if you guys are following Jonathan Witt on social media, on Twitter. a good friend of mine, Dr. Jonathan Witt. And he's been dishing out the evidence, man. Him and a guy named Hugo Kruger, who you can find on Facebook. I've actually had Hugo on my show, my radio show, and I'll try and bring him on so we can discuss COVID and who it's and who it's really targeting. It's mostly the elderly. It really is most of the elderly and people who live with sort of serious comorbidities, obesity being one, hypertension being another, diabetes being another. But even then, within reason, that doesn't sound right. I think it just elevates the risk, but essentially COVID isn't as deadly as we were led to believe that it is. Again, the media and the politicians drove a narrative that created more hysteria than a logical response. And we see this, of course. We see this because there are other societies in this country which have approached COVID-19 from a more rational and even a liberty-leaning perspective, and they're faring quite well. Taiwan, Singapore, South Korea, countries that approached this and said, no, let's actually deal with this with the science and focus on testing and tracing and isolating those who are sick and allowing those who are healthy in the society to get it and build up their immunity. That's essentially what these societies have been doing. And they're faring well. They're faring better than us. Insofar as they didn't have to shut down their economy, to that extent at least, in some cases. I mean, look at Sweden, because I know Sweden now is, Sweden, as Trump said, last night in Sweden. But no, I mean, look at Sweden. The Swedes did the right thing. They said, no, we've taken the time as a society, as Swedes, to build trust between government and institutions. Really, I shouldn't say government, but rather institutions. And that's important. That's an important distinction. Swedes don't trust their politicians. They trust the institutions that govern in their society. It's the institutions that are trustworthy. And they said, yeah, look, we have strong institutions, and this is how they're dealing with COVID. They're erring on the side of putting the responsibility into the hands of individuals, into the hands of citizens, but empowering them with the information, empowering them with the knowledge. So you have a citizenry in Sweden who are fully, have a transparent government, fully informed around the risks, and the dangers, and fully informed around the risks and the dangers, and are asked to take responsibility for their health. And it's worked by and large. I mean, they even got a pat on the back from the World Health Organization. Not that I'm a particular fan of the WHO, but again, another topic for another day. And I do see the comments here. I mean, Makopa is basically saying, please don't underestimate COVID. It's not deadly, but it's the most infectious disease in living memory. I'm not sure that's true. It is unbelievably contagious, of course, that's a given. It's a respiratory illness. And therein lies the danger. But Makopa, when you walk out of your house as a human being, you literally assume this sort of risk on a day-to-day basis. When you leave your house, you have a strong chance of contracting the flu. You have a strong chance of contracting tuberculosis. You have a strong chance, if you do get sick, of developing pneumonia. But we take these risks on a day-to-day basis. We take these risks on a day-to-day basis. Why? Because that's the world you live in. You don't live in a risk-free world. So what should happen then? What should happen is in a sane and rational society, you should be advised and given as much information as possible for you to take responsibility for your healthcare and for you to be able to make smart decisions around how you can keep yourself safe. Excuse me. How you can keep yourself safe and what you can do to protect those around you. But what you shouldn't accept, what you really shouldn't accept, is that someone else is going to take the responsibility for you. And by extension, use violence and the threat of violence to make you do things. So again, it's food for thought, guys. It's food for thought. I'm digressing a little bit. But yeah, schools, guys. Schools are going to reopen on the 1st of June. See Mokopa's vehemently disagreeing. No, Mokopa, I'm sorry, you're wrong, dude. You're wrong. The argument isn't whether COVID is contagious or not. Of course it's contagious. By the very nature of it being a respiratory virus, it is contagious by nature. It is literally a virus, so it goes out looking for a host. And if you have a population of what? I think we're 9 billion people now on this earth. That's plenty of people that it can be a host to. But that's also why our development as human beings has allowed us to have something called an immune system, which literally does this work 24/7. Right now on your skin, for example, are billions of germs and viruses, etc., working in a good and bad way to protect you. That's what evolution does. And what we've done now is we've begun to believe people who are telling us that no, we must forgo all of that knowledge. We must forgo all of those facts. The fact that people have, especially healthy people, have strong immune systems that deal with this kind of virus and basically treat people as though they're cattle. Like we're trying to protect them from, contracting like mad cow disease or something by keeping them in pens. And so, no, guys, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Parents will tell you that we send kids out to play in the dirt, in the, blah, 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 and they come back with illnesses, but they fight those illnesses off. And if the illness is beyond, quote unquote home remedies, then what else has humanity done? We've developed healthcare using science. We take our kids to doctors and blah, blah, blah to get, healthcare treatment. But suddenly with COVID, we're not doing this now. We're being told that no, we must lock ourselves up and, hope against hope that, this thing doesn't catch you, as if it's literally, got binoculars saying, there he is, get him. No, guys, I'm sorry. And I had this debate. With a political party in this country that tweeted something which was weirdly asinine. For whatever their reasons are, they were taking exception to the Western Cape government's approach to testing and COVID-19. And they were saying something like, no, even though they are testing the most, they're not tracing, and you've got to trace and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I accept that. Testing and tracing is an important component of fighting COVID. But where they then flopped is by saying, what's the Western Cape government doing? Are they trying to achieve herd immunity or something? And they framed that as if it's a problem. They framed the idea that, of course, you want a society to have herd immunity. The idea that people, a good portion of your society, get or contract a virus or a germ that causes an illness and develop the antibodies for it. So that season, if it's seasonal, that season's virus, and they're protected from it, and they develop the antibodies that they can respond to even a mutated version of that particular germ or virus. And they seem to phrase it as if that's a bad thing. Oh, what are they trying to do? Achieve herd immunity or something? I would hope they're doing that. Because I can tell you now, and I've got skin in the game here, guys. I've got skin in the game. Don't think I'm just talking from oh, no, he's distant in jail. No. I've got skin in the game. I'm a morbidly obese individual. I'm hypertensive. I don't have diabetes. But essentially, if you look at the data, I am in that higher risk percentile of who COVID really, really affects. So, of course, if I really was a selfish person, I'd be like, no, guys, stay inside. Ooh, don't do this, don't do... No, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying, guys, if you're healthy, and you're literally someone who takes the necessary precautions to not spread something like this, the social distancing, because now I think we've sort of perverted what the definition of social distancing is. We now sort of interchange social distancing with quarantining. We've actually begun to, if you look at the use of language progressively from the beginning to where we are now, around the world, by the way, we're now calling social distancing quarantining, lock someone away in the house. That's social distancing. No, it's not. It's not. Social distancing or physical distancing, as Leo is saying, is the idea that, even if you're out and about, as the Swedes are, you just recognize, keep a little bit of space, so that if you cough or, there's a social etiquette also with it. If you cough, don't cough into your hand, cough into your shoulder, all of that stuff, which at the heart of it places the responsibility into your hands, not the hands of a government bureaucrat. But people don't want that. Some people, they don't want that. They want to be told, no. When I stay in the house and do this, shut up and obey. That's what I'm worried is happening with this COVID thing. It's that shut up and obey mentality, which is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Anyway, let me circle back. So, guys like Abo Jonathan Wett and Hugo Kruger, I can name quite a few. Jeremy Nell, Germ, the cartoonist, they've been sharing solid content from, experts in the field who are saying, guys, this is what the data is showing us. We now know more about COVID. And clearly children are, yes, they can get it, but the data is absolutely crystal clear that it's not killing children at the sort of rates that made us worry when we saw places like Italy and, even New York in America. But the children are not making up those numbers. Children are not the ones making up those numbers, which begs the question, children obviously have some sort of immunity, or rather, sorry, I trapped myself in my own sentence construction there, let me rephrase. Children clearly have or rather, COVID itself is not going after children and affecting rather children, going after. I make COVID sound like some serial killer, like it's sort of like waiting in the bushes, or like it's, sort of behind a glass pane. Hello, Clarice. Sorry, that was a weird digression. I'm back. Children are clearly not being affected the same way as, for example, the two groups I mentioned, people with comorbidities and, of course, the elderly. And that tells you a story that surely you then need a rational approach. You likely and should reopen schools and deal with it as and when cases arrive. And by the looks of it, the cases wouldn't overwhelm the healthcare system, which was the basis originally for the lockdown. Kanti, at what stage will the healthcare system be ready? Anyway, so kids are going back to school. I know parents were worried. The parents, parents being parents, sort of hit back and say, no, I'm not sending my kids and blah, blah, blah. And I get it, guys. I get it. We're scared. But I do believe a lot of it comes down to the scaremongering and the fear-mongering that's been happening. Whereas the data is suggesting that, no, I don't think kids are in the crosshairs of this particular virus. I think a rational approach would be, to protect those who are more vulnerable, and allow those who have, stronger immune systems and the like to get on with things. And yes, people will get it. As you have a situation with the flu, people will get the flu. But it's our ability as humanity to literally get these diseases and build the antibodies for it that has seen us survive as long as we have on God's beautiful green earth. That's literally the science. But now suddenly, no, we must forego that and just ignore all of that and pray to God some politician will have the answer. I'm not sure that works that way. I'm not sure if things work that way. So let me know what you guys think. I know the parents were losing their minds. Some people on my social media were saying, hey, what do you think about this BDL? Let me know what you guys think, Send me in the comments. I will try and read as many of them that I see come up. Leo, for example, shout out to you, Leo, man, for the engagement. Leo says the problem of opening schools is logistics. I'm inferring a logistics issue because of the fear mongering. Yeah, I think that's fair. We've scared people into thinking that sending their kids to school will just see all of them drop dead. The moment they put their foot into that hall or a classroom, gone. No, guys, stop that. You're literally building up a fear in a society that shouldn't be there, where people can't even think rationally around, and I said it, the formula that the Swedes used was transparency, information, arming people with information, and placing them responsible for their healthcare and their family's healthcare. And I've got the same impression that we can do the exact same for South Africans. Stop treating South Africans like children and actually say, guys, here's the information you need. whether you're reliant on the state for healthcare or the private sector, we're going to ramp up, our services in that regard. Stop the damn corruption in the public healthcare system. Stop the damn corruption. Stop the damn thieving. Stop the cater deployment, and actually run a functional, well serviced and well resourced system. You wouldn't be stressing out as I think we are. If you knew that we had a functional healthcare system. I think part of it, and it's not being said in the mainstream media, and it's definitely not being said by the politician, but I think part of the fear-mongering and the attempt to distract using fear-mongering is the fact that we know that we've had 26 years of these politicians fucking up, I swore, but we've had 26 years of politicians messing up the public health system to the point where when a crisis like this one does come, we in the back of our minds, we know that it can't deal with it. I think that's what's really driving the fear-mongering. I think that's what's really driving the no, keep them at home, keep them at home. And guys, you can't hide 26 years of a communist, socialist clusterfuck, basically. You can't hide 26 years of it when the shit hits the fan, so to speak. Yeah, no, I'm swearing. Bear with it. You can't hide behind that. And this is what I mean when I talk about institutions being more important than politicians. Because in South Africa, politicians are super important. They have appropriated for themselves the guard status, where they pick winners and losers in society, where they corrupt institutions in order to have their friends eat and fleece here, steal a little bit from there. And the effects of that are now being seen when the doo-doo hits the fan. Because now the institutions are weak and they can't do what they intended to do. Again, whether you believe there should be public health care or not, that's not what I'm prosecuting here at the moment. What I'm basically prosecuting is the issue of what should government actually be? A government of strong institutions or strong politicians? Because if you choose the latter, then you can expect what we're going through now, which is when stuff happens, there's no system to deal with it. Hashtag never trust a commie. You damn right, Carl. Shout out to you, Carl. Welcome to the show. So again, I hope you guys see that distinction, because I know it wasn't the focus of the show, but it's coming out. It actually requires me to just talk about it a little bit. The importance of strong institutions and not strong politicians. Anyway, food for thought. Actually, no, let me not end it there, because it also comes back to what we're now seeing is the politics playing itself out of the national government versus the Western Cape government. Now, say what you want to say about the DA, and I'm not really a fan of them. I have my history with them, and I'm not a fan. But say what you will about them and the Western Cape government, but the Western Cape government is heads and shoulders above any other provincial administration in this country. And why is that? Because their politicians in that part of the world have focused on strengthening institutions and not politicians necessarily, even though they do have flashes in the pan of that trash too. But the truth of the matter is they've focused on strengthening their institutions and not their politicians. And don't take it from me. There was a sound clip I was going to play you by a Dr. So-and-so. It was on a John Maytham show. Just give me 2 seconds. Let me pull it up. John. Sorry, I'm a man, as I always say. I can't multitask. But it's a very good conversation to. I'll put the link in the chat group so you can check it out. It's a very good. It's a very good conversation to listen to, because he talks to this top doctor. I really want to find it, guys. And this guy lays it out, man. He's like, look, for instance, we're seeing the numbers that we're seeing in the Western Cape, not because the Western Cape is necessarily worse, but because they're actually delivering realistic numbers or more credible numbers. They're doing more tests than any other province. So it stands to reason that if you're doing more tests, then you're going to find more cases of the COVID. And that should be a strong indictment on other provinces. You now have a situation where the national government is trying to have its cake and eat it at the same time. Insofar as on the one side they say, the Western Cape is worse off. And if other parts of the country are going to go to level 3, maybe the Western Cape should stay at level 4. And when they say that, they're conveniently ignoring the fact that maybe we're calling the Western Cape worse because they're literally testing more. And how about you account for the fact that you're not testing in other parts of the country? All right, I think I'm back. I saw the buffering symbol and I just took a moment. Hopefully it'll give me a chance to find the link. In any event, I'll post the link on the chat when I find it. And this guy basically says, this expert, this doctor, what was his name? Show podcasts. Why do these people make finding their podcasts so hard? It's weird. Like, who does that? Let's see here. Even if it's just to find the name of the doctor, and then you can have a reference to search this. But yeah, guys, I'm seeing your comments. Please don't get me wrong. As I do this, lordy-lordy-lord. Oh yeah, I'll post this later. But this guy, he's from UWC, if I remember properly. He says, look, you've got to understand, the Western Cape is doing one thing right, and it's testing more, and we're seeing more cases. So it's not that this province is like, and also, last thought on this, because I can sort of hear myself get frustrated and not finding the link. The other thing I want to sort of raise about COVID, as I look at it in the context of kids being told they can go back to school as of June 1, is where's the evidence that our hospitals have been inundated? Because that was what was being sold to us. And I'm seeing it being sold to us again now with this group of mathematicians and blah, blah, blah. This recent group saying, yeah, hey, expect to see 40,000 deaths and bloody, bloody, blah. I'm like, but where were these cases now? I mean, we know this thing is spreading. We know it's spreading, but I don't see the evidence of being, or at least governments are telling us that, hospitals are over flooded and we're preparing trucks to be used as mortuaries, the refrigerated trucks and the like. We're not seeing that. Instead, we're seeing, as the Minister of Health recently shared, I think it was last week, a video of like hospital staff dancing and having a good time. And I know people are like, oh, Big Daddy, don't be mean. Even they have to, let their hair down every now and then. But it kind of rings as a little hollow, or it doesn't sit well with me when you're busy telling people and you're scaring them, making them think that hospitals are just a death zone right now. In fact, people are avoiding going to hospitals. They're avoiding going to hospitals because they're so fearful. Meanwhile, our health professionals are doing dancing videos. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there's something. I think we're being taken for a ride, unfortunately. And we're now treating a very serious thing, because COVID is serious. Don't get me wrong. Please don't think I'm trying to downplay it as like oh, that COVID thing. No, guys, it's very, very serious. And I explained, based on the data we're seeing, that it's groups like me, for example, people with the sort of comorbidities that struggle with it, and the elderly. Of course, it's very serious. But you then shouldn't use that as a means to try and push other agendas. It's actually been rather disgusting, if I'm to be brutally honest with you. Anyway, let me move on, because I'm probably going to have a show on this again on here once I fix up my tech. And I'm going to bring 3 distinct voices on here. Jonathan Witt, because I think he's been vocal, and it's important to have someone like him on because he actually works in the public healthcare system. He actually works in it. So he can speak from first-hand experience. I'm going to have someone like Hugo Kruger because he's done a fantastic job. Look, I spoke to Hugo a while ago, does an excellent, excellent job of actually bringing together the data and saying, this is what's happening in France, this is what's happening in Germany, this is what's happening here, like in lucid detail. And when I have him on the show to sort of unpack these issues. But yeah, guys, so I don't know. to you, the parents, maybe as a final question, drop some comments, man. Let me know what you think. Are you going to send your kids to school? Are you fearful? Or are you going to do it and take certain precautions? Like, let me know, guys. I'll genuinely be interested to find out what you guys are going to do on the 1st of June. And I'm going to watch that one, of course. Let's see here. Ah, yes. This is where I'm going to end it off on. Or not really end it off, but like it's the piece de resistance of what I wanted to talk about. I did mention to you guys at the end of last week that this week would be defined by the pushback, the legal pushback of various interest groups against the state. Organizations like DSA, Sakelege, AfriForum, the Institute of Race Relations are beginning to mount that legal pushback. And I know you guys were wondering, but what happened to those attorneys, Advocate Kasim and Advocate Aaron Richards? And the IRR had a live feed this morning. I encourage you, a kombucha came back, just kidding. The Institute of Race Relations, through the Daily Friend, check out www.dailyfriend.co.za. They had a live stream this morning with Aaron Richards, Advocate Aaron Richards, and she explained why they've dropped their legal challenge. You know, and I'm really sorry, guys, my tech has failed me. I did have the sound bites here. But basically, in a gesture saying, look, we as advocates were concerned at the lack of pushback, even as they witnessed the state sort of appropriate for itself these extraordinary powers through the National Coronavirus Command Council, etc., etc. And that was the initial impetus for why they decided to take and to write that letter initially and to threaten court action. And not only threaten it, they were going to do it. Because they didn't see civil society raising its voice. Now that civil society organizations are raising their voice, as I said, AfriForum, IRR, Sakelege, and DSA, they could then take a step back and support any of those initiatives. So guys, the fight back is literally on. Pay attention to these organizations as they begin to push back against the state and question its use or misuse of a lockdown for clearly, patently irrational and unconstitutional things. Support those organizations because I think it's going to be lit, as the young ones say. I know DSA is going to take on, things like the curfew and other asinine decisions on that. I know Sakelege is going to take on what is now developed as this permit regime, where suddenly the state thinks every Tom, Dick, and Harry in government can walk up to you and demand a permit for sometimes innocuous things. Like, you now need a permit to literally deliver food to people? Like, are we not listening to this and saying, what? Like, I now can't put together, as I have been doing in my kitchen. I've got these boxes that I bought. I can't put together the little mini meal and, sunlight and, some toothpaste and all that and deliver it to someone. I need a permit. I need to go to some municipal official and say, if it pleases the crown, I would love to deliver this box of goodies to the poor and unfortunate in society. Hey man, screw that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not asking you to do like I am. I'm not saying break the law, just in case someone now says, hey, I'm going to take you to Johnny Lawman or whatever. But I'm telling you right now that I, Big Daddy Liberty, I'm not asking for permission from the state to be philanthropic. I'm not asking permission from the state to give charitably. No fucking politician, no grubby state municipal official is going to touch anything that I use my money to donate to someone else in order for them to have a power trip on that shit. Screw that, I'm not doing that. Just putting it out there, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. But yeah, guys, look out for the legal fights that are going to be happening because I think they're going to be very instructive and they're going to set precedences. Like I said with the case of Mr. Collins Corsa, the one that I spoke about last week on the BDL show, I think this will also set a precedent that is necessary. The idea of where are the limits of the power of the state? That is a question that has to be answered. And if we can't answer it as citizens through the ballot box, then at the very least we must test them in courts of law. And by the way, those are not the only places where you can test state power, but we'll have that conversation another day. But I want to remind you about these and to pay attention, because the IRR now is saying, hey, we're going to write a letter to the president, and we're looking to also join as friends of the court. Is it amicus curiae, something like that? You legal eagles will let me know. They're going to join in the fight, the legal fight against the state. And this is what I keep saying to you guys. Get involved. Get involved. In fact, Quentin is asking, please give us the SMS number for the IRR again. Short thing, guys. You can SMS your name to 32823, and someone will give you a call and sign you up for a debit order. Guys, support these guys, especially as they fight for your rights. All right. This thing's dragging on. I do want to end it. And I wanted to end it on a... Wow, I nearly said something totally assholeish, but fuck it, let me commit. I want to end it off on a somewhat positive note. Negative, of course, for the employees of this organization, but positive for the taxpayer, which is South African Express. You know, SA Express. Sorry, I'm just opening up the page. So the business. Sorry, let me just find it. Sorry about that. All right, here it is. So I'm going to read it because I think it's important, and I'm hoping it will be a precedent also. I've been talking a lot about precedents being set out. I'm hoping this in particular is going to be a precedent that we work with. So I'm reading off an article that was on the Independent news website, IOL, and that's the SA Express employees have been told by the embattled airline that they would not be paid and should not return to work as their contracts of employment were suspended due to the liquidation of the company. A letter sent to more than 600 employees announcing the immediate suspension of their work contracts was sent. The High Court in Johannesburg at the end of April granted this order for the provisional liquidation of SA Express. Guys, first things first, before people call me an absolute asshole, don't get me wrong, I do empathize and sympathize with people losing their jobs. Of course, that is a terrible situation to be in, and no one really wants that. But the economic imperatives are important here, and they're important to sort of discuss. Because for far too long, the ANC government has been using state-run enterprises or state-owned enterprises as cash cows for cronies and cadres. Basically, the political elite in this country who contribute nothing to the economy other than they happen to have a particular race or a particular skin color that the law says should be rewarded. But don't get that wrong either. Just because you have that skin color also doesn't mean that you'll de facto be rewarded, because you have to be within their friend circle to actually be considered for reward. That's the actual trick to things like BEE. Anyway, I digress. But state-owned companies like SA Express, South African Airways, Eskom, Transnet, I can go down the line. I think there's over 260 state-owned enterprises in South Africa, if you did a complete list. They have been used by the very same politicians who I argued have been given, have been made bigger than institutions. In other words, because we've given politicians the power in the society, those same politicians have used their power to basically pick winners and losers in South Africa. And who are the winners and who are the losers here? Clearly, the employees are going to be losers. Clearly, the employees are going to be losers. But do you honestly think that the people who've maybe been beneficiaries of the pumping of taxpayer funds to prop up these zombie organizations, do you think those elite individuals are going to be paying a hefty price for this? Of course not. Of course not. Which brings me back to the idea that, yes, as a citizen reading this, you must be sad and commiserate with those who might be losing their jobs. But at the same time, you need to use this as an opportunity to call out even more of these state-owned enterprises, which literally are fleecing and stealing from you. Because you've got to ask the question, who does it benefit in South Africa really for the government to own an airline as a business? Who does that benefit? Do you think someone who lives in, in Nyanga or in, do you think someone who lives in Alex, is the kind of person that takes SAA flights on a regular basis? If not, why is that person subsidizing the existence of that airline? What is the moral basis of that? Asking the poorest in your society to prop up the luxury, really, of the richest? Let's take a moment to really think about that. Because in any situation, every decision being taken is going to have externalities, negative or not. In other words, it's going to have repercussions, negative or not. And of course, I recognize that one of the negative repercussions of this is that, yes, people who have families and, possibly themselves have done nothing wrong as employees are going to pay a hefty price for this. I recognize that. But at the same time, you now have a situation where you're no longer going to be pumping money down a black hole. And I think it's incumbent on all of us as South Africans. And remember, I keep telling you, stop being afraid of these lefties, man. Stop being afraid of these communists. Stop fearing them. You've actually got to fight back. You've got to get involved in the battle of ideas and do the groundwork of convincing people that actually you don't need a government that runs businesses. You could redirect that money into services in other areas, services that empower you, that enable you to have the opportunities. That's when I talk about the battle of ideas, and I always say, no, I can always break it down to policy level. It's on issues like these. It's actually on issues like these. To recognize two things about society and economics. Number one, scarcity is a real thing. There is no infinite amount of money. There is no infinite amount of resources. Scarcity is a real thing. And scarcity requires that individuals in positions where they can choose and pick, make the decisions that to the best of their ability, prolong the use of something in a rational way. And pumping money and essentially throwing good money after bad money is absolutely a terrible idea. And we've been doing that for 26 years in this country. And who have been the beneficiaries of that? Politicians and the elites around them. People who leech off of the state and then have the audacity to call themselves business people. Your president, by the way, is a good example of that. The fuck has he ever created? Other than the fact that he's black, and legislation in this country says if you're black, you're entitled to 26%. That was what BEE says, at least. You're entitled to 26% of existing big business. Big business must dole out 26% in shares to you so that you can feel like you're somebody. How the hell is that? I mean, guys, come on. Take a moment. Even if you're a black person, take a moment and actually think about what the law is saying about you. Think about what the law is actually saying about you. It's basically saying, no, when you'll never amount to anything unless I take from Paul, I rob from Paul to give to Peter, but, Eric must get a cut of it, of that transaction. Is that really what you amount to? Is that the be-all, end-all of who you are? Are we really saying black South Africans in this country can't be the ones? If we gave them a solid education, if we gave them a quality healthcare so that they can actually enjoy quality of life and be healthy, if we gave them safety and security, you mean to tell me if we gave the vast majority of black South Africans those three powerful enabling opportunities, that they wouldn't be the sort of people who then say, look, I'm capable, I'm able, I'm going to be a captain of industry. I'm going to start something, build something, and bequeath it to my children. And they can grow it and actually build that generational wealth. Are we really saying we can't do that as black South Africans? Are we really saying we can't do that? Now we need a corrupt gaggle of politicians to be the ones that dole things out to us on the basis of race. And even then, it's not really on the basis of race. It's on the basis of whether we kiss their asses as much as possible or not. Because I can assure you now, black as I am, I'm not going to be a beneficiary of BEE. I'm not going to be a beneficiary of BEE because I'm not in the crony circles. I'm not in the elite circles of, the comrades, the chief, yes, Keita, and all of that. I'm not there. So I won't be getting tenders and all that good stuff. But I also know equally that I don't need that. I don't need that. As long as you give me as you should every single black South African, as you should every single South African really, a solid education, a quality healthcare, and to live in an environment that is actually safe and secure. If you give me those three things, that is the best form of economic empowerment. That is the best, like that's the first step. That's a lacquer first step to give anybody. Because then from then onwards, it's about me pursuing my own self-interest based on my knowledge, my skills, and abilities. And if you've empowered me to be a highly knowledgeable, highly skilled, highly able person, what the fudge stops me? What the fudge stops me? Why is the world not my oyster at that stage? Let me be precise and specific. I'm going to break it down for you because you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. You are not hearing me. I can take a group. Let me not speak in hypotheticals. Let me shout out a homie. We're not friends, but I call him a homie. Michael Jordan is involved with an initiative where he's been taking these programming skills, machine learning, all that new stuff. He's been taking those skills, removing them from their White Castle bastions and putting them in the poorest communities and saying, give me a group of young, hungry township kids, informal settlement, poorest kids. I will give them these skills. I will train these kids up. I will make them literally as competitive as some international, guys with these sort of skills, and watch what happens. It's not charity. They're not being given handouts. This is a strong hand up. This man has literally said, you know what? I'm taking these skills that represent not only the now, but the future, and I'm giving to the very people who are locking out of these sort of skills. And watch what's been happening. These kids are thriving. These kids are leaving this little training program, entering the world of work, and finding quality jobs, high-paying jobs that allow them to build the income and to build the household savings. Because remember, in economics, we talk about people earning an income, and from that income, building household savings, and from those household savings, buying better quality of life, better options, like better healthcare, better safety and security, better education, you name it. That's the formula, guys. That's the formula. It's not the redistribution of wealth. It's not the lofty ideas of the government owning things, the means of production, and blah, 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 all that socialist claptrap. It's none of that nonsense. The formula is a simple one. You build a strong, thriving, free market economy, and then you give every single individual in your society an opportunity through a solid education, safety and security, good healthcare, for them to literally compete in that free market, for them to pursue their own separate interests. An economy is only as strong as the ability of every individual to be able to pursue their own separate interests. We are not equal, guys. We are not equal. I suck at math. So I'm not going to be in job fields that require, heavy math skills and the like. But what am I good at? I'm good at this and I'm good at that. So what do I do as an individual? I pursue my own separate interests. And every other human being does exactly that. And that's what a market is. That's literally the definition of a market. And to make that market as free as possible is to allow every individual, regardless of their knowledge, their skills, or ability levels, to be able to compete and do what they can do to build an income. From that income, build household savings. From those savings, to buy themselves better options and for themselves and their kids. That's the formula. So that then, to circle back to where this began, you can't achieve any of that if you literally have a government that's overtaxing a society, over-regulating a society, and wasting those funds that it then steals from people into vanity projects like state-owned enterprises that don't really produce what they are meant to produce. I mean, take a moment to think about this. Eskom is the sole provider, effectively, of electricity in South Africa. You would think that if you're the sole provider of something, that you should be, raking in the money hand over fist. But it's broke. Eskom runs at a 20 billion rand debt every year, and it's currently sitting at just over 400 billion rand in debt. How can that be? And they don't even have competition. I think that tells you the story. That tells you the story of why you cannot trust the state to run anything, and how you, the individual, you, the family, are better placed to make decisions about your own life as long as you're empowered to do that. As long as you're empowered to do that. given the opportunities, the enabling opportunities that I like to talk about. Solid education, solid healthcare, safety and security. And by the way, when I say that, because you remember I said to you, the ground was also about sharing these ideas. Those enabling opportunities in a free society, even though the state can provide them, and that's a separate debate. It's more for the libertarians. That's a debate I have with my libertarian and my anarchist friends. But I'm of the view that if you're going to recognize the type of society that we live in that type of a society that we live in, what you need to do is focus on poor people and say, you know what, I recognize that I can't shut off the taps immediately, right? I recognize that. But what I will do, if I am going to provide a service as the state, is give the power and the resources into your hands, the individual, into your hands, the family. So those three things, let me just focus on that as I wrap up. Those three things of healthcare, safety and security, and education, instead of the government running education by having schools and paying for teachers and all that blah, 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 how about you take the education budget, break it up amongst the number of poor families. Don't worry about the middle class. Excuse me. Don't worry about the middle class. Don't worry about the rich. Like, the state has no business trying to interfere or getting involved there. Let them do what they do. So if your stated objective is to help give a hand up rather to the poor, then break up the education voucher, break up the education budget into vouchers and literally give it to poor people and say, you know what, here's a voucher for you. You go out and you shop for the best education for your kid. The state's not going to do anything other than just give you the voucher and you decide. You mean to tell me if I gave poor families, poor parents, we've calculated rough calculations, between 16,000 and 22,000 rand per year for their child, you mean to tell me they're not going to look for the best opportunity, the best schooling they can give their child for that? Are we seriously trying to suggest that? Of course not. Of course not. These parents would do what every other middle class and rich parent does, and they'll shop for the best for their kid. Thus, you're creating that demand now. Suddenly, parents have the capital, albeit in the way of a voucher. They can't blow it in a... Am I back? I saw the buffering symbol, so I gave it a moment. I think the point I was making is, if you empowered poor parents with this voucher, imagine a poor parent from Alex living in a shack, having 22,000 rand for them to decide where their kid goes and gets the schooling. You mean to tell me those parents are not going to find the best, absolute best of the best that they can get for their money's worth? You mean to tell me you're not going to do that? Guys, let's stop treating people like children, and let's actually treat them, like the adults that they are. The adults that they really are. And trust people to make responsible decisions about their own life and their quality of life. Because I can assure you, you gave poor parents that kind of money, they'll be the first to demand quality schools in the area. And that's the demand side of it. It'll also fix the supply side of it. Because now you're no longer funding government schools for, heavily unionized teachers who don't give a flying F to just treat your kids with disdain. You're no longer funding that crap. They're not getting that money anymore. Now they need to perform. They need to be able to say, hey, we're a quality school. We're going to attract kids because we're offering quality. It would suddenly mean school managers, principals, what we used to call principals in my day, would have to manage. They'd have to weed out shitty teachers if those teachers are crap. But why? Because they recognize that the prestige, the esteem of the school is what attracts, and the outcomes rather, is what attracts those vouchers, i.e. what pays their salaries. So you fix the demand and the supply side. So these are the ideas that I'm pushing out into communities when they ask me the question of what does a free society, a liberty-leaning society, look like in practical terms, given where we are in South Africa. And I can show you that wouldn't last forever. So in other words, the state giving these vouchers wouldn't be something that lasts forever, because eventually you build enough people in the society who are well educated, then are able to move up in the social ladder, the socioeconomic ladder, and become the sort of middle class people that don't necessarily need that sort of level of state assistance. Because equally as the state, you're taxing the existing middle class less, because you're not having to pump out money on asinine things anymore. You're taxing the middle class less. They're able to keep more of their savings. They're able to build more of their wealth and their income, and you build a prosperous society. You build a property owning society. That's how you do it, guys. Because I saw some of the questions saying, oh, but middle class people can barely afford things as they are now. Yes, because they're taxed to death. They are taxed to death. They are struggling to build household savings because they're taxed to death. So that same government that I'm talking about, that focuses on the poor by taking resources and power and placing it into their hands, equally puts the responsibility on those who are in the existing middle class to say, look, I'm taxing you less, you keep more of your income, use that to build savings, use that to buy the options that you require to build wealth. Guys, it's a free man talking to you, as I always say. Anyway, let me wrap this up because I think I have been waffling on and on and on. Let me look at some of the questions, maybe for the next 5-10 minutes, and then, guys, let's call it a night. Let's see here. Carl. Communists capitalize on the corruption of capitalism. Dalga, I agree with you. I'm trying to find questions though. Joe Emilio, shout out to you, Joe. Been trying to reach you. Yes, I have seen your messages, Joe. I will respond. Sorry, man. I now live in a world of lots of inbox messages that I need to respond to. So I will get back to you, Joe. Yeah, guys, let me know also whilst I'm here, what you thought about this episode. Do you like these? Any show suggestions? Okay, let's see. Quinton Nagal, have you approached Cliff Central to assist you in getting the message out there once you know where you will be and when? I know he will support your cause as it is his message too. Yeah, sure. Gareth is a mate, and I don't want to say too much, but I am in conversation with Gareth. So could be some exciting stuff coming your way. Remember, guys, the air war and the ground war, I work on both. So I am working on getting the air war onto as many platforms as possible. In fact, just to give you some inside information, before this lockdown, I was actually going around the country. Am I back? I think so. Sorry about that, guys. Unfortunately, I'm using I live in a little flatlet, like a backroom flatlet, and I'm surrounded by trees and, yeah, and a dog that pisses me off. Anyway, sorry, I really digressed with that one. But if you've been seeing my videos on social media, my landlord's dog, what an asshole. And what makes it worse is I love dogs, but this little some bitch is an annoying little dog. Absolute asshole of a dog. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So I do get bad network. I'm using a rain modem. So yeah, hopefully I will get that sorted out soon. Okay, sorry, the point I was making before it broke up just now is that before the lockdown, I was actually going around, I've been talking to local radio stations across the country and asking them to syndicate the show on their platform. And I have quite a few that have already agreed to it. But literally, this was like 3 days before the lockdown was announced. So, I haven't really wrapped those up yet. So, but do expect me to be on your local radio stations very, very soon. Because my argument is, and my thought process is, it's all fine and well for me to broadcast on social media, but a large proportion of people don't have access to the internet. So at least they'll be able to hear these ideas by just tuning on their ordinary FM radio. So for example, I do have a deal at the moment with West Coast Radio, in the West Coast in the Western Cape, sorry. So I'll be on there soon enough, and there are quite a few other radio stations too that have kind of agreed in principle, but we just didn't get a chance to sign anything on paper. So you can always look forward to that. That'll be something I take up again once this lockdown is over. So I am going to work on that. So you can expect me in radio stations in Limpopo, Northwest, Northern Cape, everywhere, guys. As soon as this lockdown is over, I'll sort that out again. Okay, sorry, I've been missing questions. I don't know if there are questions, but I did say just last 5 minutes, let's have a chat. Sliv, the Shiv, Shout out to you, homie. And thank you. Yes, I do. Sliv is saying, glad to see that your subs have grown. Guys, I do appreciate every single one of you who have joined the Liberty Bus. Guys, hop on, get your friends hopping on, and let's actually share these messages far and wide. Remember to smash that subscribe button and hit the little bell notification so you can actually be notified every time I am on. South African Alternative News Network. Yes, the state would steal the vouchers. Lol. I understand your cynicism. I do understand your cynicism, but that's the power of placing the power and the resources into the hands of individuals. It eliminates the opportunities for government officials to steal from people because they don't control the expenditure of the money. That is in the hands of families. Lo, Khopolo. Khopolo says they must put your respect. They must put some respect on your name. Hey man, I should go all like baby up in there, like put some respect on my name. Shout out to you, brother. I hope you're well. Guys, as I really look up to wrap the show, wrap up the show. You can even hear me sort of jumble my words now. Carl is saying, get the join going and use the income for the cause. I don't know if join is an acronym for something, but maybe just to recap. Everybody who donates to me on Patreon, and I'll try and get Zappa and these other mediums too, just to make it easy for people. Everybody who donates to me, please understand this. This money isn't going into largesse and I don't know, what do people buy these days? I actually can't even think of anything luxury. It's not going to buy a Bentley or anything silly like that. It's cash that's going to be used to pour diesel in the bakkie, Fasimba, my bakkie, and get me around the country, whether it's the most rural parts of KZN to the leafiest parts of Tamboerskloof in Cape Town. If I'm invited to come address people, if I'm invited to come give a lecture or a talk at a Stokvel, a talk at a community gemeenskap saal, it's these funds that will get me there. Because, as I said, the ground war is more important for me than even this. I hate to say it, but it's more important to me than even this. Because that's where you win people's hearts and minds, and that's where you win the battle of ideas. So as I travel around, any accommodation I'll need, I'll use this money to pay for that. Any fuel or meals and all that kind of stuff, just basic subsistence, this is the cash that I'll be using to do that. And I know, guys, I don't think you understand. I'm so committed to this, it's actually kind of scary. I feel like a zealot. I'm so committed to this that it's actually very, very scary. But anyway. Let me read 2 or 3 more questions / comments. I must wrap it up because I'm going to be on the Gareth Cliff show tomorrow morning, the Burning platform at 7 a.m. So if you are a listener to the Cliff Central, you'll find me tomorrow morning, Thursday at 7 a.m. Your favorite fat boy, Big Daddy Liberty, will be on the Burning platform. Look forward to that one because I'm going to share with you what I think will be the political ramifications of this COVID, and I've got some interesting evidence for that. So look forward to that. All right, guys, as I said, last 3. I am heavily entrenched in government-funded school supply chain across all provinces. DOE is paying up to 7 Rand for a single pencil. Wow. That costs 70 cents. Now think about education being biggest budget. Exactly, Lauren. Exactly. You're spot on. As soon as you allow a system where unaccountable officials, unaccountable politicians, who then have a gaggle of crooked cronies and crooked cadres who leech off of the system, as soon as you entrench and develop a system like that, then a fucking pencil will cost 7 Rand. Maybe even soon 70 Rand. because their intention is to fleece the system, not to render a service. They have no incentive to render the service because no one punishes them for this kind of bad decision making. That's why rather transferring the power and the resources into the hands of parents, again, guys, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. Nirvana is not for this world. What you can do is put in place policies that reduce harm. Whether you're talking about safety and security, or you're talking about education or healthcare, what is the best way of empowering the individual and reducing the likelihood of corrupt activity and harm? Anyway, one more question, guys. Let's see here. A comment from Kaylee van Leeuwen. I'll definitely not send my kids back to school anytime soon. I don't blame you. There are parents who are going to inevitably say that, but I think a lot of it comes down to the fear that has been driven in communities by not only the media but the politicians also. But in terms of the evidence, I don't think children are in a great risk here. I'm actually quite comfortable with kids going back to school, obviously with the sort of precautions that we should take. But I'm comfortable with what the data is beginning to show as to who the real risk groups are for COVID-19. All right, guys, let me call it there. Let me call it there. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. It's been super, super lekker. And it's always great to just release sometimes and just talk to you guys. And just as a final word, guys, please consider it. It's just $1 a month, a single $1 a month. I know some of you guys give a lot more, and I'm like sometimes I'm close to like tears when I see that because people are invested in my message, and that's a very, very encouraging thing for someone like me who sometimes feels a little bit alone when I contemplate doing what I'm about to do. But I do appreciate it, guys. And a simple $1 a month. Find me on Patreon. Support the Institute of Race Relations on their IRR campaign. And guys, support me on the ground war. Help me to get into all communities across this country. I will literally be, it's crazy what I'm about to do, but you'll get more details once the plan is fully formulated, but you'll understand in full, lucid terms as to why it's important for me to be able to get out and do the work that I'm about to do. Guys, shout out to everybody who's watched this episode of the BDL Show. I will see you guys on the flip side, and remember, thanks to all my Patreon guys, I do appreciate you. Good night, everybody. Leila Tov to my Jewish community. And I'll see you guys on Friday. Friday for the BDL Show, the podcast version that is syndicated on Chai FM, and that I'll put out to you guys as a podcast later in the day. So guys, Leila Tov to everybody. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. And remember, just in case you thought I forgot, never trust a commie.